Good morning to you, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here. It is Wednesday, November 30th, 2022, the last day of the Atlantic hurricane season. And as such, it's the last of my hurricane outlook and discussions officially for 2022. But that doesn't mean we're going to turn the lights off, power everything down, and wave goodbye until June. Not even close. I'm going to talk about that. What do we do in the off season? What will we be looking at? Hopefully all of us collectively. Yes, so don't go anywhere after this is done. Stick around. We got a lot to talk about in the off season. But for today, I'm going to take a look back at a few statistics, a couple of tweets that are very interesting, what went right, what went wrong with the seasonal forecasting, and then again we'll look at some other things as we prepare for the 6 months of the off season. What are some of the puzzle pieces we'll be keeping an eye on that could shape next year's hurricane season? And then a look ahead to, again, what we do as a project, this overall project that I have crowdfunded through Patreon and all of the engagement through social media, our community, our weather community here in this little niche that I have carved out over the last 25 years or so. What do we do when it's not hurricane season? We'll talk about that as well. Thanks for joining in, though. It's good to have you with me as we wrap things up. By the way, this map is really cool, and whoever creates these over at Wikipedia or wherever they come from, I don't know who the author is, and even if it's auto-generated, somebody had to generate the code, it's really cool, so good job there. That being said, what do we got? Well, I think it's obvious. Most of the activity happened over here. Where is this? Well, it's the Southwest Atlantic and the Caribbean. We had Earl, we had Fiona, we had Ian that got in there, we had Lisa and Martin and Bonnie early on. Bonnie was early in the season, of course. And most of our ACE points were generated over here, a good deal of them. ACE being accumulated cyclone energy. And then notice the lack of deep tropical activity. Yes, some of these systems got their origins out here, but there were no hurricanes in the deep tropics east of the islands this year. That is very unusual. Something is going on with that. We'll talk about that more, too, as we go forward. But what about the forecasts? Well, they were good, but not great. And some of the metrics were terrible, honestly. Early on, the guidance suggested, and remember, this is not... These forecasts from reputable sources are not put together contrary to what people say on the internet, and sometimes just screw the internet, right? They are put together with a lot of thought, a lot of funding to do the research, to try to figure nature out. That's a tough assignment. That being said, multiple entities, from universities to private weather companies, and even just individuals that are very, very smart, have no meteorological background, but they're pretty observant. They put these things out, and most of the indicators were screaming major, major season. And the one metric that really stands out, I'll talk about this a lot, is the ACE. And the ACE, or accumulated cyclone energy, even as late as August, was forecast to be substantial. In other words, the energy that was going to be output from this seasonal activity was going to be tremendous. An ACE score as high as 180, that was predicted in the spring into early summer, and then it dropped a little bit in early August. But even NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, working with the National Hurricane Center, even their early August update was very aggressive. And yet, we ended with an ACE of only 95, about half of what was predicted as late as June, right? And then, it came down a little bit by the time we got to August. But August, that's what was ironic, is these forecasts that came out for the peak season in early August. August was a shutout. Nature just came in and said, you know what? I'm going to humble everybody. And we had no named storms. It was just a big fat zero for August. And our actual ACE score ended up short of the long-term average. I think we're in the upper 80s, 87, 88% of the average for the last 20 or 30 years, something like that, and well short of the spring and early summer predictions. Why? Why did that happen? Well, we'll get into that a little bit more as well as we go forward. A couple other maps here. This is from Phil's tweet, Dr. Klotzbach's tweet. This is the National Hurricane Center preliminary map. This will get updated as they work through their tropical cyclone reports, the TCRs. Those will be forthcoming. And then here are the different landfalls for named storms. We had Colin. Anybody remember that? It was like, hey, there went Colin. It was very quick. And then we had, of course, Ian and Nicole. And I want to say, on one hand, and that's it. That's all we had. Well, again, I know it's so cliche. It only takes one. This year, it was two, depending on your perspective. We had Fiona, big impact for Puerto Rico especially. And then, of course, our friends in Nova Scotia. And then for the United States in particular, Ian was our poster child this year for it only takes one. Potentially the costliest hurricane in U.S. history when it's all said and done. Probably a major insurance catastrophe coming for Florida. It's already in motion. The deaths, ridiculous, shouldn't have happened. Anything above zero, to me, is unacceptable, and I take it almost personally because we try to keep people safe. And then it's going to be one of those legacy storms that people will remember for a generation or two. Other than that, and that's not to diminish what happened, but it's really remarkable and truly, very factually, other than that, nothing anywhere else. Nothing north of Cape Fear, North Carolina, and nothing west of Tampa, all the way over to Texas. No landfalls. That's incredible. Now, it's interesting that some of the seasonal guidance, as folly as it was to suggest such a high ACE score, I'm looking at you, Euro, seasonal outlook. Remember, it was like 225 in early June that it was predicting, and we were like, oh my goodness. Yeah, that kind of didn't happen. But what it did show, and the UK Met was very similar, I think the Canadian CAN-SIPs, and even some of the CFS guidance, there were a lot of hints early on that Florida could be in the crosshairs this year. Precipitation anomalies, potential tracks of wind anomalies, higher wind gusts than the climate norm, that kind of thing. There were definitely signals that the Florida Peninsula could be a target this year. So that part of the seasonal guidance was accurate. But did it matter? No, because a lot of people didn't evacuate for Ian. So even if these seasonal forecasts are spot on, Dr. Klotzbach, Arizona, NC State, Joe Bastardi, whoever puts these forecasts out and they just nail it. Something happens to some supercomputer, program, algorithm, whatever, nails it. It doesn't really matter until we can say 3 months out, and even then I don't think people will believe it, there's going to be a Category 3 or 4 hurricane within 100 miles of Fort Myers. You better start getting ready. I just don't know if people are ever going to take things completely seriously until it happens to them. So my point is, the seasonal guidance, while helpful, it still is not helping us on the preparedness side. We're still getting people that won't evacuate, that won't take the necessary action. And hey, I'm not, I have a little bit of social science in what I do, but that's not my forte. That's for the people with the higher pay grades that deal with social sciences to deal with. But an interesting observation nevertheless. Some of the guidance was good, other of it was not. All right, Dr. Klotzbach's entire wrap-up, his summary is online here. I'll put a link to it in the description of today's video. You ought to read it. It's really interesting, and it is put together with a lot of different people that help out. It's very thorough, and I like the fact that Colorado State, led by Dr. Klotzbach, the lead author, does do a post-mortem, as they say, write-up about all the things that went right and all the things that went wrong, all the observations. They are right here, good, bad, and ugly. All right, a very interesting stat from our friend Brian McNoldy. This is really crucial. Of the 14 named storms that we had, all right, 75%, I'm rounding up, of the ACE was generated by 4 of them, okay? The remaining 25%, rounding down, were from the rest of the 10. So we had, as he points out here, we had Earl, right, Fiona, and Ian and Danielle. Those all comprised totaled, summed, roughly 75%, rounding up, like I said, of the ace. As important, or maybe even more important. Didn't mean for it to do that. Why did it do that? I just wanted to... That's interesting. If you click on the picture, it takes you to a link. I haven't seen Twitter do that before. Elon must be messing with things in the background. Normally, when you click on a graphic, it makes the graphic bigger. Let's see if I can open the link. It's probably going to open that link. Look at that. That's annoying. Elon, come on. Anyway, I'm sure that Brian's blog is interesting, but I want to show you this map bigger, and I won't be able to. That's okay. It kind of threw a monkey wrench into here. My point before Twitter screwed me here is none of that ace that I just talked about, and I was on a roll there until that screwed me up, happened in the main development region. It was all over here, some of it close to the deep tropics, but that's kind of being generous. Most of the ace was way up here, out of the tropics. That is really, really important, because we have seen that year after year after year, really since 2017. That was the last time that we had a lot of ace generated in the deep tropics, with Irma and Jose and Maria especially. Something is changing. Is it going to keep going this way? Is it just a temporary blip? What's causing it? Again, these are interesting questions as we observe what happened this hurricane season. So, great statistics from Mr. McNoldy here. Appreciate him compiling these. Really interesting to see it visualized there. And yes, go read his blog. I might as well put a link to this as well, because he's done a good job writing all of this up. And I just thought if you clicked on it, though, maybe if I click on this, hey, look at that. That's all I had to do, that extra step. That's funny. Well, look, I'll just rehash it one more time. There are your big ace producers right there. Nothing out here to speak of at all in the deep tropics. I continue to be marveled by that, because for those seasonal forecasts to get, look, you click on fills and they pop up. If you're going to get these 180s and 150s, then you need a lot more ace to be happening over here in the deep tropics, and we didn't have that. So interesting statistics there. All right, one of the big drivers of the hurricane season, in any season, will be sea surface temperatures and the anomalies, the departures from normal or average. This year, the high latitudes were very warm, and they still are. They were warmer than the deep tropics. Remember that weather is caused by heat. And without heat, if we didn't have the sun, of course, we wouldn't have the solar system, but follow me here, stay with me. Our weather is because of the sun. The sun heats the ground heats the air, and everything starts, all right? And the tropics get this tremendous buildup of heat, usually down in the tropics, where the water temperature is warm, and then you sort of tip the scales. There's colder air in the upper levels of the atmosphere. That gives you your instability, and off things go. Globally, Southern Hemisphere has their tropical cyclone season. Northern Hemisphere has its, and we see what happens, right, on an annual basis. But in the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years or so, maybe longer, there's been a shift of much more high-latitude anomalous warmth and less global tropical activity in the deep tropics. Yes, cyclone activity and ace points are going down. But when we do get development, they tend to be strong. Ian, Michael, Laura, Ida, Haiyan in 2013, other typhoons in the Western Pacific. There's so many of them. Haiyan just sticks out. Patricia, 2015 in the Eastern Pacific, 215 miles per hour. And that was, up here in Mexico. It wasn't way down here close to the equator, deep in the tropics. Something is definitely shifting. And I think this year, I think logic would say that the imbalance was thrown out of whack because of the high latitude warmth. I think that's a pretty big suspect area to keep an eye on. In future years, we can go back and look at other years in the past. Then when it's really warm up here in the high latitudes, and the main development region is warm but not as warm, you're not going to have a lot of deep tropical activity. and it tends to end up over here in the western part of the basin. We did have the La Nina, and I think that helped to give us some of that Caribbean activity that we saw. What was it? Bonnie and Lisa and Martin, if I remember correctly. Trying to remember everything out of those 14 named storms, right? But we didn't have anything out in the deep tropics. Very, very interesting. And I think the sea surface temperature pattern and the anomalies had a lot to do with that. This is important, too, for a couple of reasons. The Gulf of Mexico is not connected to the state of the ENSO. In other words, El Nino or La Nina don't affect the Gulf. Statistically, there's no correlation. A lot of people have looked at it, Dr. Klotzbach especially, and Bill Gray before him, and there's really not any kind of connection there, which is really fascinating because think about what we've had, and let's see if I can pull this off, just since 2018. We had Michael right up here in Mexico Beach, roughly. In 2020, in 19 we had Barry in the Gulf, but whatever. We're not going to count Barry. 2020, we had Laura almost, it was trying to be a Cat 5. We had Delta over here. We had Zeta, right? We had, in 2021, we had Ida down here. 2022 over here, we had Ian. And even going back another year to 2017, of course, Category 4 Harvey over here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sally, almost a Cat 3 over here. That's 8. Did I miss any? We had Delta, we had Zeta, we had Laura, and Sally was almost a major. That's a lot of hurricane activity from 2017 to now in the Gulf of Mexico, regardless of the state of the El Nino, the ENSO state. And that's important because I think this anomaly here in the Gulf, it's been running way warmer than it should be year after year after year, and that's where a majority of our destructive hurricanes have been since 2017. Really, really interesting. Is it going to continue? Well, we'll have to see. One thing I will certainly be watching is the Gulf of Mexico, and will these anomalies stay, these warmer than average anomalies, because that will affect next year's hurricane season for the Gulf, certainly, and it'll affect the Deep South and eventually the Tornado Alley area severe weather season, already doing so yesterday and today with the activity we've seen down here, right? We had the moderate risk yesterday, and that severe weather continues to march eastward. I'll show you that in a moment. All of that because of this very warm Gulf, part of the ingredients anyway. The very warm Gulf relative to average advects or moves laterally, horizontally, a lot of moisture. And moisture helps to fuel the instability, especially if the instability is there. The moisture helps to really get things going. Moisture and heat, all of that coming from the warmer than average Gulf of Mexico. It's very interesting that the East Coast has had ridiculous warmth off the East Coast, but we have not had a major East Coast hurricane in a long time. A long time. Nobody's complaining about that, I'm sure. It's all been in the Gulf of Mexico. Another interesting observation here, going back to at least 2017 there. We can even go back further, but just these last several years, that's very interesting to me. All right, another way to look at it, and these are some of the things we will look at in the off-season, is the Reynolds version of the sea surface temperature anomalies, Dr. Richard Reynolds. This is a weekly composite, and even this, ending on the 26th of November, shows you how warm the Atlantic is overall, and especially the high latitudes up here. Lots and lots of warmth in the high latitudes, and that helped to distort the pattern. I do believe that makes a lot of sense to me. And then there were other nuances. People talked about anticyclonic wave breaking and dry air intrusions and upper level lows and Saharan dust. I just think it's more simple. When it's really warm in the high latitudes relative to the deep tropics, you're not going to have a very busy main development region season. At least that seems to be what's happening. I think that makes perfect sense. All right. ENSO, speaking of that, El Nino Southern Oscillation, we will be watching this very closely in the off-season. once a week. And by the way, I might as well throw this out there now. Every Monday, I will do an off-season hurricane outlook and discussion. I've been doing these for a few years now. That will continue every Monday, maybe every Monday or Tuesday, whatever. I mean, there might be a Monday where I just don't feel good, and so I'll do it Tuesday. But the point is, once a week, we're going to look at these things. We're going to look at the anomalies on a big scale, a smaller scale. We'll look at the weekly there from the Reynolds method, and then we're going to look at this, the state of the INSO, because with the exception of this one model right here, which basically predicts the end of the world, I'm just kidding, but if it got up to 2.5 Celsius by summer, the INSO there, the region 3.4, which, by the way, in case you're wondering, that's roughly this area right through here, something like that. It's that one model is saying that it's going to go from that to about right there by early summer. And wow, if it did that, it's lights out, literally. That wouldn't be a good thing. Luckily, I don't think that's going to happen. That is what we in statistics world call, anyone? An anomaly, an outlier, especially the outlier. That's the more accurate term. Anyhow, most of the guidance suggesting a gradual, more reasonable increase in the water temperatures in the Central Pacific through the summer. This gets out to July, August, September, and a good deal of the guidance here suggesting just about at or maybe slightly above minimum El Nino thresholds. Some of the guidance does fall flat there and keeps it at neutral, which is really interesting because if we had a neutral Pacific, a little bit warmer than we've seen recently, and a warm Atlantic, I think that could give us a pretty busy hurricane season. The La Nina tends to kind of skew things really extreme in one direction, and the strong El Ninos obviously skew them extreme in the other direction, but neutral seems to give us these really not pleasant hurricane seasons. So we're going to be watching this closely. Again, this one model here, the the BCC CSM 11, whatever. Whatever that model is. Trying to see what it is there. I don't even know what that stands for, but it's off its rocker, I hope, because that would be bad. It'd be like 150 degrees in Dallas or something. I'm just kidding, but that's no bueno. We don't want that to happen. Another tool is the CFS V2. That did really well. Overall, if you go back and look at my videos from December of 21 through January, February, March, etc. of 22, and look when I talked about on my outlooks every Monday or whatever they were, yeah, the CFS V2 did pretty darn good. Or well, I guess is the more accurate term. It did well. And what is it forecasting? A little bit more aggressive than what we just looked at, but this is just one model, and the mean of the model there is suggesting an El Nino by July. So we shall see, especially with whatever the Atlantic ends up doing. Now, one of the other aspects to what we do here, if we're ready for hurricanes, we're ready for anything, really. And we get a lot of people that watch my videos and interact with me on Twitter and YouTube from not hurricane-prone states. Yes, Florida, the Gulf Coast, the East Coast, that's a majority of our traffic and our engagement. But we do have fans, supporters, enthusiasts, whatever the word is, weather geeks, all over the United States, all 50 states, and from all over the world, all right? And so we don't just focus on hurricanes. And a big part of that is, I am funded enough that I can cover other weather. Thank you all very much. That has been a long time dream of mine. I wanted to be able to expand beyond covering hurricanes. I was encouraged to do so by some of my longtime friends. Looking at you, Steve, Delaware Steve. Many years ago, he said, you really should start chasing those nor'easters. Well, starting in 2014, I did. And ever since then, especially in the advent here of us utilizing Patreon the way we have, and my relationships with national media, most recently and going forward, Fox Weather, I'm able to do so and should be able to continue to do so, covering winter storms, spring severe weather, lake effect events, the big nor'easters that we get, southeast U.S. snow events, whatever. If it's a big ticket weather item and I can afford to go out, I can't cover everything. I mean, I don't have $1 million budget, but I will cover a lot with my team. I say I and me, it's definitely a team, and we're looking forward to it. We really are, because as you can see, lower 48 weather, not trying to exclude Alaska and Hawaii, but those are much harder to get to, but lower 48 weather is very interesting. It's dynamic, and there's a lot that we can cover, and we can keep people engaged. So, also, weekly, during the off season, I will be discussing the weather outside of hurricanes with a new segment that I'm going to call Uncommon Weather with Mark Sudduth. Look for that starting this coming Monday, all right? Just to give you a heads up. And everybody on my back end is like, what? We didn't know he was going to do that. No big deal. Just need a new title and whatever. It's uncommon weather. It's different. It's not your common boring weather. It's Uncommon Weather with Mark Sudduth, a copyrighted feature of me, right? That's mine. I own it. So, yeah. Other weather, very important to me. We will be covering it because, as you can see, it's impactful. You have lake effect stuff going on even now in the lee of the lakes, the severe weather in the deep south, and a big winter storm coming into the west. I'm not covering anything this week, but coming up, believe me, we're going to be out there. Even northern Arizona during the snow season is fascinating. You can get blizzards in and around Flagstaff, the desert monsoon contrasting to that in the summer. Yeah, we'll try to cover as much as we can. And then it's hurricane season again, and we're ready. We're in practice. We might test new technology, break new ground on something. We're going to be using Starlink starting in 2023. Finally. Speaking of Elon Musk, hopefully that'll all work out well too. And we'll be using that in these remote areas where we might not have broadband. Stuff's changing. Technology is always improving and getting better, and we're going to stay on top of it and even ahead of it as best we can. One of the tools we're going to be using, I really like this. I got an email from the fine folks at Weathertap. If you go back and look at some of my early videos from tracking the hurricanes and just early stuff, I think it was like the late 90s I started using Weathertap, my friend Jesse and I. And then we got mobile ThreatNet from Barron's, and then the internet came to pass, and now we have radar scope on our phones, etc. But Weathertap, when I got the email, I was like, hey, I appreciate it. They offered me a subscription to test drive it, and I really like it, so I'm going to use this a lot when we do our weekly weather outlooks, the Uncommon Weather, right? Remember that. It's going to be called Uncommon Weather with Mark Sudduth. I like this because you got your radar overlay, but then you can go in and you can add all kinds of different layers to it. And I'm a map guy. I love the map. You got your lightning, your storm reports, current fronts, temperatures, wind barbs, your dew points. You can just start populating it and really display the weather in a very interesting and informative way. They have other tools as well, but this is my favorite, and I can't wait to show it to you and utilize it a lot as we go forward. Yes, it is an endorsement, so to speak, because they did offer me something. They came to me, and I appreciate it very much. Weathertap.com. Check them out if you get a chance. All right, the storm's calming down a little bit. We'll be focusing on this during the off season because, again, weather is important. It affects everything we do, and we got to stay on top of it. At least today, not as active as yesterday, but active enough. Stay weather aware, as they say. And even as we get into December, that's December 1st, there's December 2nd, and yes, there is a threat of thunderstorms even as we get into the early part of December. We, our collective group here, will cover all of this. We're just part of it. I know there's a lot of other people doing weather out there on a big national scale like Fox Weather, new in the business, kicking butt and doing terrific. I can't wait to keep working with them, all the way down to 8, 9, 10, 15-year-old kids doing weather as well on social media. It is a very interesting part of our lives. Nobody has ownership of the whole thing. It doesn't belong to any one person. And there are some that are controversial. There's some that are boring. Maybe I'm both sometimes. I don't know. I try to just fit in and do what I do and bring you with me on that ride, because the weather can be beautiful. It can be frightening, it can be destructive, it can be deadly, but it's always, always spectacular. It really is, from your amazing and spectacular sunset, to the picturesque tornado, to the eye of the hurricane, filmed from the space station, or maybe one day, finally, our hurricane balloon that we're going to put up in the eye of a hurricane eventually. We've done it once in the middle of the night. We're going to try to do it during the day. You know, your big hail events that are interesting, your 10 feet of snow in the Sierra, your 4 feet of snow or 8 feet or whatever it could be in Buffalo. Yeah, it's very, very interesting. And hurricanes might be my forte for whatever reason. I don't know where it came from, but the rest of the weather is equally important to me as well. And we're going to do the best we can to cover it for you, involve you, keep you engaged, keep you aware, and in some cases, might even come to your area and set up some of our equipment, and we might meet you in person. You never know. I do look forward to that. All right, a couple of things here from the business side. I didn't promote this enough. I'm not good at selling myself. Other people are. You know who those people are. I'm not those people. I'm trying the best I can to run this business. I love it too much to just promote, but I got to do better. And I know, because people want some of this stuff. They do. That being said, we do have a store. CJ and other people on our back end, Tim and Kari, all helping. Mike, Mr. Cornelius, as we call him, or just Cornelius, and others have really helped out a lot. We got this great store here through Teespring. It's real big on YouTube, so check it out. I'll put a link to it in the description, and you can get anything from a shirt hey, you look like a target right there. It's got stuff on the back, too. The hurricane symbol right in the middle or on the side, whatever. You get iPhone covers or Android. Yeah, it's all there. Teespring does a great job. I've got a few of their shirts. And I got to get me one of these pints, though. These guys right here, I like these glasses because I'm a big water drinker. Definitely drink water 99% of the time as opposed to soda and tea and juice. And I got to get me one of these. So check it out. It's our store. You can order something for yourself or somebody for Christmas. If you like what we're doing at HurricaneTrack, it helps to fund the future. Absolutely. And, of course, the other way is subscribe on YouTube, for goodness sakes. Please help us out. Let's grow the YouTube. I really like what we've done with YouTube over the last 5 years especially. And it's interesting, I've been with YouTube since 2006, and yet it hasn't gone above 100,000 subscribers yet. I don't get it. It's like, what's the breakthrough on the algorithms that we have to do? I know what it is, and I'm not ever going to do it. I'm just going to be me. But that being said, yeah, really, subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. It is important. It's not just something that YouTubers say. And really important, too, make sure you turn notifications on because we do go live, and you want to be notified of that. I do post these updates even when it's not hurricane season, and you want to get notified. Hey, HurricaneTrack just posted something, especially when we start doing the uncommon weather segments every week to kind of give you a look at what's going on the week ahead. And by the way, on those segments, I'm going to be bringing in guests that'll help me talk about what's coming up the week ahead. I think I'm going to do these probably every Tuesday or so. We'll figure it out, but it's going to be once a week. But you got to be notified. You got to be notified, so hit that notification bell. And then spread the word. Tell your friends and family. It doesn't cost you anything. Let's help grow what we're doing here on YouTube, on social media. I'm on Twitter. And, you know, look, I know Twitter is in this weird state right now with what's going on, but it'll survive. It'll be there. And you can just block out all the stuff that you don't want. That's the good thing about Twitter. And anything else for that matter, you don't have to listen to it if you don't want to. You don't have to listen to me. You can turn me off and unsubscribe and mark as gone if you want to. That's how easy it is. But hopefully you won't do that. All right? And then finally, we are on Patreon. That is how we crowdfund this whole project. Everything you see behind me that's equipment-based with my backdrop, all of the cameras that we use that are all around here in my office, this computer that I'm doing this update on, the Tacoma that I drive now, 100% crowd-funded. How many people can say that? And it's really true. All of it. I'm not independently wealthy. You know, it is done through crowdfunding. And I am so proud of that. It is absolutely remarkable. I have met many of these people in person. They are awesome. They are into the weather, and they support what we're doing financially. and it helps to do what we do. So we are on Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/HurricaneTrack. You can give a gift of a Patreon subscription or membership if you want to. You can email me to find out how. And you can join up through our Discord as well through Patreon. We have Discord. I mean, it is just remarkable what we have done since I really started promoting Patreon and digging deep into that, starting at about 2018. So if you want to get involved that way, you can certainly do so. All right? All right. This was long, but we needed it. I needed to tell you what was up in the last season here and what we're going to be doing in the future and everything in between. So I appreciate you sticking around and giving this a watch and a listen. That'll do it for now. I will be back Monday with the first of the off-season discussions, and I think I will just do 2 videos every Monday. I'm still trying to figure it out. The uncommon weather will be on Mondays as well, and then I'll do my update for the hurricane season also. So 2 videos every Monday or so, 2 videos a week, and then if something big comes along, we'll do more. And I'm sure that won't be too long, and the weather will start throwing us curveballs once again. All right, that's it. We're done with the 2022 hurricane season. As always, thanks for tuning in to me. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack. That's our brand. I'll talk to you again next week.